Just do it. Don't waste time trying to come up with like a 300-page plan, and having all your ducks in a row and making sure that this is set and this is set and this is set. If you're going to do that, you are never going to launch your business. It's never going to be perfect. Just go and do it, and you're going to iterate as things come along. Like the first step, go register an LLC. You don't know exactly what name to use. Fine, pick a name and then do a DBA, doing business as, right? You can always change it. You don't need to, if this is the thing that you get stuck at.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Olga Topchaya. And Olga started her journey, went off to college and was an English major. I didn't know exactly what she wanted to do, but loved to read. Ended up going into a marketing as a career. Worked at an agency, luxury jewelry, tech company, financial, and also mobile apps and e-commerce across several different industries. I did a lot of product marketing for those businesses, and then in 2022 went on leave, and the business ended up laying people off, and so started doing some contract work, focusing more on AI and ML or machine language and automation, and decided to dive into that deeper on the technical side, and started her consultancy, which is what she's doing today. So, with that much as a quick introduction, welcome on the podcast, Olga.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you.
Hey, well, excited to have you here and hear your journey. So I just gave a, 45-second version to a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack that a little bit and tell us a little bit about how you got started going off to college and studying English.
Sure. So I was probably writing since I was like 9. It was always a hobby. I love to read, I love to write, and that's why I didn't know what I wanted to do ultimately as my career, but I knew whatever it would be, it would somehow involve writing or literature. And it did. Ultimately, everything you do kind of, does involve writing. And now in the world of large language models element, we have the language element. So it kind of came around. But yeah, I started my degree. My undergrad was in English, and I was very happy doing it. It was incredibly hard work, but also I loved it. I felt very lucky with the professors that I had. A lot of them were adjunct professors. They weren't just career professors. So they had the business experience. They were lawyers, and they were marketers. And so you had the English and the literature and the writing, and they just kind of did it for fun. And those are like the best type of professors, not just ones who are trying to get tenure. Although there were some great folks like that as well that I had as mentors. So that was my degree. And then when I was in my like junior year, I think, I started working as like a side gig while I was in college for a mortgage company. And I noticed that their advertising was it was terrible. And so I came up with some copy for them. I was like, hey, why don't you guys try this instead? And they loved it. And they're like, hey, you should go into advertising. And I'm like, I know absolutely nothing about advertising. What's advertising? I'm like, well, how much do these people make? That was my first question. Back then I go to salary.com, check it out. I'm like, all right, well, this could be an interesting path forward. So I got an internship at a small ad agency, and then stayed there for a little bit. The internship ended, and then I got another internship that ultimately turned into a job at a marketing communications agency. So that was kind of my path into marketing, and how I started out in marketing was on the agency side and the communication side. And then things just kind of meandered through there in on the marketing path. So I think my next job was in luxury jewelry. And there was a lot of content that I did in that side, but it was only me. It was also a small company. So I did everything. I was self-taught, whatever I could find online, all the webinars that were out there, or the blogs that I could read. This was hard to imagine now, but it was like social media was just emerging at that time, and Google Ads were just emerging at that time. So kind of, teaching myself, taking courses, all these things. Never really had formal education in marketing until I got my master's in it. And I did I worked, I think, was after luxury. So yes, it was finance after jewelry. I went into finance. There was a lot of writing on the finance side in the marketing department. And then I went and then I got my degree. And once I got my degree, I started going more into the tech side of like tech companies. So e-commerce, then mobile apps, then was on demand fitness. So it's online company as well. Then we get into fintech, and after fintech, that's when the tech layoffs, hundreds of thousands of people, right? You probably remember
No,
this in
Now, before
2020.
we get into definitely we'll get into the layoffs, but one, or maybe
Yeah.
just one quick question, because it sounds like, you went from an agency, went to jewelry, got into tech, mobile apps and a number of different areas. Was that hey, I want to get experience across a lot of areas, or is more, chasing the dream job, which is, is always, fell out of reach, or it was more of work, gaining more experience, or, any number of reasons that it could be. And just curious kind of what took you to those different areas or different industries as you were working within the marketing industry overall.
Yeah, it was opportunities just, that would come up. I think, it's obviously no secret that the way you move up in nowadays in many fields, especially, including marketing, is not by staying at one company. So you stay at a company for a few years, and then if you want a salary increase, a title increase, your best bet is to switch companies. Certainly in tech, definitely in marketing. Other professions, not so much. So I think like medical, legal, you may want to be within one company, but you're a lawyer, so you probably know better than I will. It's just based on information I've gathered from people I've spoken to. So yeah, every few years or so, kind of revamp your resume, and see what's out there. Maybe you leave, maybe you don't. And these were just the opportunities that arose that were too good to say no to, you know?
No, that makes perfect sense. Sounds like, getting the better opportunities. A lot of times it's, hey, sometimes, because I'm probably guilty of it. Sometimes, say I want to try a new thing, or want to get a little bit of a shift in gears, and have a bit of a mix up in the routine, lends it to getting better opportunities, more experience, as well as mixing up that routine. It sounds like, maybe a little bit of a combination of, or some of the, or all of the above, led you to those different industries. Now, I jumped in and you were just mentioning, so you went through a number of those industries, continued to move up, gain experience, otherwise go in that direction. And then, you had the tech industry that had a downturn. You had some, whether it's layoffs and other, issues within that industry that kind of put you on maybe a bit of a different direction, or a bit of a different path, which more led to where, things are at today. But maybe give us a pick back up, kind of walk us through what happened.
Yes. So at that point, I'm in tech for a while, right? And once you're in a certain industry for a while, you're kind of like already in that industry. It's very difficult to move out of there. So I'm in tech, I'm in B2B, and no one's hiring. This is like black holes, we're talking people from Google, from Facebook. You're competing with all of these folks and hundreds of thousands of people. And that's when, I had a baby at that time. So like I'm gonna hang out with my baby. This, we'll take a step back, we'll figure out what we're gonna do. And totally by chance, I essentially stumbled upon GPT-3. It was at that time. So this was before the Chat GPT boom. It was maybe about half a year or so, I think, before the ChatGPT boom, that I discovered it. It was called the Playground, and it still exists now. You know, it's like a developer, more like a developer tool. So I came across this, and I'm like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. Like, why is nobody talking about this? And I come to my husband, who's a developer. I'm like, hey, do you know this? Like, what this is incredible. Like, this can write and it can, it can do all these things. And he's like, yeah, it's a large language model. So like, so what? Like, big deal. Like, it's gonna replace Google. He's like, you're crazy, lady. This is not gonna replace Google. It's a language model. It's a fancy autocorrect. Like, that's all a language model is. Like, no, watch. So I decided like I need to figure out like what this is. I want to learn anything I can about this. I want to go talk to people, and understand. So that's what. So I joined a bunch of Discord groups. I joined Slack groups. I found, some YouTube videos and some like influencers in the space. I joined hackathons and just started gaining experience. And the great thing about the this field and this new wave of AI is it's much more accessible than like traditional AI and machine learning to people who don't necessarily understand much about tech. Or at least it was in the beginning. It's a lot more complex now. Now that the technology has evolved and we understand it better, but it's constantly evolving. So it's a little bit harder to get into it now. But back then it was very, very nascent and nobody understood anything about it, you know? So it was like a perfect time to get into it when it was so little was known about it. Or people understood, but very few. And then I got my first contract, my foot in the door as a prompt engineer for Copy AI. Copy AI was like one of the first companies to take advantage of large language models. Copy AI, Jasper, they're still around. I think they focus on something else now, but Writer, those were like the really early AI kind of large language model companies. Um, and and yeah, and that was like the first step, right, to into the AI world in the professional sense.
No, so you make that step, you kind of take that as the new direction, and sounds like it was a good direction, and forward thinking, because that certainly continues to become more and more a part of a lot of industries. Now, kind of walk us through. So you started that, I think, around 2022, early 2023. Is that right?
2022, yeah.
So you did that 2022. So you've had that kind of, making that or changing into that direction for about the past 3 years or so, or 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Kind of catch us up. How has things evolved? Where's the consultancy and the work at now? Kind of what are you doing today, and where do you see things headed?
Yeah, absolutely. So how it evolved. So I did the contract and then the contract ended, ChatGPT came out. So, a lot of, including Copy AI, like a lot of things just there was a reset basically in the industry with the ChatGPT boom. Um, but then another contract came up. And this time, because I had the business background and I had, the marketing and the product experience, it was for an AI company, but on the business side. And then another contract came up in prompt engineering. So I was kind of getting all these contracts, and then made me realize, well, it's now time to start my own company. Like people aren't hiring full time, but people want AI and people want consultants. So I knew I had the business element. I knew I had enough of an AI foundation. But at the end of the day, I'm not a developer, right? I don't have a computer science background and I'm not an ML engineer. So I need to have that in order to be competitive. Because otherwise, just like there's plenty of consultants out there that can offer advice on AI. But at the end of the day, they're interesting ideas, but they're just theory because when it push comes to shove, then the company needs to implement these ideas and they have no idea how to do it. So you need that technical element in order for your company to be successful. And so I partnered with developers and I hired a few and now we have a three-part service. So we start with analyzing the business need. Sometimes a company comes to us and says, I want you to build this solution. And they have a pretty solid idea and they just need some flushing out. I would still ask you why. What is the core thing that you're trying to accomplish with the solution? Because oftentimes it's like a $4 million project and you don't actually need this. But regardless, we'll flush out the idea. Other times the company will come and say, I have this problem. I don't know. Maybe AI can solve it. Maybe it can't. Can you help us out? And most of the times we can. But maybe it's an off-the-shelf solution that can do the job just as well. In which case, this is the AI consulting component. Then we go and we build the software for them. If it's, there's client-facing products, but oftentimes it's going to be more on the internal use, like for internal use in their employees. So once we build it and we can provide ongoing support, and then we train their employees how to use it. Because at the end of the day, you can have a fantastic AI strategy, you can have the, best software in the world, but if your people don't know how to use it or they think it's something that it's not, you just blew $250,000 and threw it out the window. So that training, that human understanding is very critical. So these are kind of the three elements, and we take this kind of full view approach.
No, you kind of, it sounds like, figure that out, or both, your approach, kind of what is the most benefit and helpful to various clients and kind of how to, position yourself in the marketplace. So now as we're going to kind of catch up today, if you're to kind of look out now to the next 6 to 12 months as things continue to evolve and you continue to evolve, the industry and the marketplace does, where do you kind of see that the next 6 to 12 months headed for you guys?
I think it's going to be in the same direction. Maybe the kind of products, right, that you end up building kind of change and shift, right, as the technology evolves. There's a lot more capabilities that can happen. So there's a lot more different things that can become solvable with AI, right? Before it was more on the language side that we were focusing. Now we're able to do things like agentic work, things that are becoming faster, things are becoming smarter, right? Where we're not there yet, but we're going to be at a point where we can incorporate both qualitative elements of AI and quantitative, right? Before we were just focusing on the qualitative element because LLMs, they're not very good at math. Right? You don't want them doing math. Now we're beginning to get into an area where we can do both. So all of these things are going to evolve, but the core is going to stay the same. I do think we're going to expand into more of the training side. So we've been focusing on this kind of three-part service as like a whole. But I am seeing demand for just like kind of like separate training altogether. As technology begins to evolve and more capabilities come out, people don't really know what to do with it. They don't know what tools to use. They don't know how to use it. They don't know what's what or why, and it just gets really overwhelming for people to even figure out what can be done. So I am seeing more demand coming on there, and I think that we might offer more. But yeah, it's kind of that trajectory.
Sounds like a good trajectory, and will be interesting to see how things continue to evolve as a number of different areas within the AI and that type of industry continue to proceed forward. So, well, now as we've reached the present day of your journey, and even looking a bit into where things may be headed, great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
See, worst business decision. I think some bad hires early on. That was probably the worst. It's definitely set us back quite a bit in the beginning. And what I learned from it is better hiring practices. And in the beginning, um, not to like micromanage or anything like that, but just to be kind of more involved in understanding like what is happening. So I think that was an early mistake that I made. I wasn't I wasn't involved enough in the technical component, and then just some bad early hires. That's
Yeah,
probably
and I think
worse.
that that's makes perfect sense, and that's probably an area that I think a lot of times as you get into doing your own business, doing a startup and a small business, that you encounter because sometimes you come in and say, hey, everybody will work hard, or everybody will do a good job, or you figure out maybe I'm need to get some additional skills or figure out how I manage or the level of control or a level of reins that I let them take over, and that that balance oftentimes leads to areas of mistakes are easy to make, but also great ones to learn from. So certainly makes sense.
Exactly.
Second question that I'd like to ask now is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one rule of thumb that you'd recommend?
Um, just do it. Don't waste time trying to come up with like a 300-page plan, and having all your ducks in a row and making sure that this is set and this is set and this is set. If you're going to do that, you are never going to launch your business. It's never going to be perfect. Just go and do it, and you're going to iterate as things come along. Like the first step, go register an LLC. You don't know exactly what name to use? Fine, pick a name and then do a DBA, doing business as, right? You can always change it. You don't need to, if this is the thing that you get stuck at. You don't know what you want your website to look like. Who cares? Go to site 123 and then spit out a website. It's going to be free. That's what I did. It was completely free. It's going to look like something. Nobody will see your website when you're first starting off. There'll be like five people who are going to see it. It does not matter. Just go and do it. So like take that step. Don't wait. I started the business with $2,000. And the reason it was $2,000, it was because that was the minimum required to open up the bank account. That's it. That was the only reason. If I would wait until I needed to get X amount of funding and I had all of this business plan in place, your business plan is going to change 1,000 times over. I thought I would be doing something completely different. I would be targeting somebody completely different when I was just starting out. Our target audience has already changed like multiple times because you're just starting out. You do not know and you can't foresee everything. And the economic climate is changing, the financial climate is changing. There's a lot of macro things that are happening way beyond your control. So just go into it. That's it. Don't like blow $1 million on like some like pipe idea or anything like that. So like, take small bets, right? And just start.
No, I think that's definitely a great takeaway. And just getting started, oftentimes more than anything, you know, you can do all the planning, you can figure out all the things and think you have a perfect plan. You're going to get into it, still not going to be perfect. You're still going to learn things. You're still going to evolve. And not to mention, a lot of times you plan so long, you lose steam and you never actually do it. So I think that just getting started, even if you put out something that's far from perfect or will be an evolution or getting along the way, taking that initial step is definitely a great rule of thumb. Well, now as we do wrap up towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
LinkedIn is the best way. And they can always also reach out at info@lapisconsults.com. But I'm very responsive on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, expand their network, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again, Olga, for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So, just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Well, thank you again, Olga, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you.